So you want to move out, but there's a couple things you got to consider first. But don't worry, that's what I'm here for. I got you. But let's get into it. What's good, guys? It's your boy Damien here. Welcome back to my channel. We like to talk about self-improvement, personal finance, trying to be a well-rounded person in total. And today we're going to be talking about moving out of your parents' crib, fleeing the nest, exploring the new world. We've been moved out for a minute now. We moved out in January. It is now April. So it's around like 3 months-ish, because we didn't move out at the start of January. It's like halfway through, closer to the end of January. So, whatever, simple math. And if you haven't seen it already, you should check out the empty apartment tour and then go check out the furnished apartment tour and then come back to this video and we can talk about a little bit more. But basically today we're gonna be talking about things that you should definitely consider before just deciding, oh yeah, it's time to move out. Because you would think these would be common sense or like most people would know them, but low-key, it's just not the case. But I'm here to help you. I will guide you through this rocky path that I've already been through, but it wasn't that rocky because I also did what you're doing and I searched videos about it. I mean, we do like to base things around finance on this channel, so it's gonna be more related to the financial parts, but the first thing that I'm gonna mention isn't financial related, but it's a very, very key part of your move out process. If you don't plan on living with a roommate, this doesn't really apply to you, but if you do plan on having a roommate, this is very much down your alley. And picking a roommate is the most essential thing you can even consider when talking about moving out. Because people are like, yeah, I'll just room with my friends. It'll be so fun, like living with my best friends. We'll just be hanging out all the time and this and that. Like it'd be super chill vibes, but no. It's a lot deeper than that. Like obviously there's a lot of things to consider, like if they can even pay rent on time, if they're a reliable person, you gotta think about chores, splitting that up, or like groceries. Like there's multiple levels to it, and it just can't be because, oh yeah, we're friends, we're close, it'll all be okay. Because it's okay until you have to live with them every day and it actually gets tested. It's a whole different story. Like personally for me, I don't think I could really live with any of my friends. Like I've actually talked about this with a couple people, and it's not a dynamic that I think I'd be able to have. Like for the most part, I like to keep things pretty in order or clean. Like for the most part, unless I'm having like a really long week or a long day or something, like things will get messy, of course, but eventually with the quickness, you want to clean it up because I don't want to live in a mess. I like to keep things like at a certain tier, that vibe. So personally for me, it's like right now I live with my sister. So I feel like if I wasn't living with my sister, I'd have to live by myself. Like it's either this or I go on my own, because I don't know anyone that I personally, or I would assume would be a good roommate that I'd be able to deal with long term. So, I mean, if we move out of this apartment and she decides to go elsewhere, boy's gonna be looking for studios and all that good stuff. Okay, now, enough of the non-finance things. We're back in the finance where we thrive. And the first thing we're gonna be talking about is the rent or mortgage, depending on which way you wanna go. I mean, you can check out the video I did on renting versus buying if you don't know yet. But the rent. So everyone knows you should probably save up your rent beforehand. Like, I mean, if you save up like 3 to 6 months, 2 to 4 months, whatever you're comfortable with. It's just a smart thing to do, You just cover your bases, make sure you have like some peace of mind, so that like going through things, if you have like a really bad month, you know that you have a bit of a cushion. And that is the end of the common sense things, apparently, because there's a lot more to just thinking about rent than the rent itself, if that makes sense. So within the scope of rent, there's obviously more to it than just like what you pay monthly. Like, people look at apartments, it's like, oh, $500, yeah, I can afford that. It's just $500 a month. But the thing that you don't have to realize, especially when you're first moving out, is all like the down payments and stuff that just keep like slamming you left and right. Because like I was prepared for it, but it still hurt. Like the damage deposit, like half of your rent, and then you still have to pay like your utilities or like Wi-Fi or whatever doesn't already come within the rent. It just like slaps you around. So that's definitely something people sometimes, but also sometimes don't think about, but also sometimes do think about. You know, it's just something that you probably should consider. I mean, you kind of have to consider it, but if you didn't already, now you know. And on top of all the utilities and whatnot that you might have already thought about, there's also the additional thing of putting your parking on top of the rent. It's not for everywhere, but I think for most apartment complexes, you have to pay extra for parking. Like specifically for ours, I have to pay like $150 a month extra for my underground parking, but I mean, it's worth it, so I'm not complaining, especially in the winter. That was a lifesaver, but it's still something on top of that. So your first month of moving out, like if your rent was $500 and then like half of that for damage deposit, so now you're at $750, and then if you do have underground parking plus another $150, like it just keeps adding up, plus all your utilities and whatever, give or take $100 to $200 a month. Like it quickly adds up to close to $1,000, and you're like, dang, we didn't plan for this. And then if you're moving out, as in like you're just buying your property, it's kind of the same vibe. You know, you got your mortgage payment that everyone looks at, but then instead of like the damage deposit, the type of similarities I would say to that would be like your closing costs with a realtor and like stuff like that. And then obviously you have to pay like property taxes, and you definitely have to pay your own utilities and all that stuff. So it's not just, oh, I'm paying $1,000 a month for my mortgage, like, oh, I'm living nice. No, you're paying like $1,500 in the first month. I don't know how much closing fees are, so probably maybe even more. One thing I will say about the rent though, with paying like just the base price of it, you want to be making about like 3 times what you pay for rent. So like for us, for example, it's about $1,000 each, give or take, and we both make over $3K a month. So it's like that vibe, because a lot of people look at it and it's like, yeah, I can afford to pay that price every month and it won't hurt. But you don't want to just be able to afford to pay it one time. Okay, moving on to the next thing, you gotta consider like, what are your eating habits like? Because everyone can eat lavish, you know, getting takeout every other night, or like having your parents cook for you. Like everyone can live lavish when they're at home. You just think that's your lifestyle. But when you go grocery shopping for the first time, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt very much. Like for our story, like when we were at home, we did our own grocery shopping for a little bit, like half a year or something like that. So we knew like what our habits were like, or how much on average it would cost us and all this stuff. But that's only for the stuff that like we wanted to buy, or stuff that we would use on a regular consistent basis. But then that wasn't even including like the little condiments and like salt and like oil and like all this little stuff that you don't even think about, because like your parents are already just like buying it. So it's not a thing that you have to stress about. That it adds up. That's where it adds up. Nothing can really prepare you for that first trip, I'm gonna be honest, because there's just so much stuff that you have to buy. It's kind of heartbreaking, but I mean, you can make the effect a little less if you plan properly, you know, make an actual list and stick to the list, you know, the basic stuff of grocery shopping. If you don't already know, like, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry, because you're just setting yourself up for failure at that point, because come on, bro. That's just common sense. But don't worry too much, because after that first trip, it starts to go down a little bit in price. I mean, give or take a couple hundred, because I mean, you're still buying like a lot of stuff when you go grocery shopping for the most part. I mean, depending if you go like bi-weekly, monthly, yada yada. But it's eventually gonna go down when you have like your base things of stuff that you have to have in your kitchen. So it's okay, don't stress too much with the first trip. It's gonna hurt. That's all I can say. Okay, and the last thing I need you to consider before going, and the last thing that I think you should probably consider before fleeing the nest is, do you actually own anything that you can bring with you to your new spot? Because furniture, it'd be expensive. I'm telling you, some things you're just like, why? Why are you this expensive? Like a rug, why are you $300 to $400? I mean, obviously depending on where you shop, but nonetheless, it's like, no, you should be like $50, you're just on the ground, please stop hurting my wallet. And then just like everything in general is expensive. I mean, like you expect couches to be expensive, but it still doesn't hurt any less when you have to pay I guess it depends on what you get, but like between $1,000 to, I don't know, $3,000 for your couch, painful. Mattresses, painful. Kitchens actually require a lot of stuff to be functioning, and it's quite annoying, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. Love to cook, but annoying as hell. But that's it for today's video. I appreciate the watch. If you liked it, maybe liking, comments, even subscribe. But I mean, that's it. Till next video. Until then.